Hello, it's me, Julian Greystoke. I'm here with Nigel. He's down here. You can't see him. We are doing another book review today. Yes, that's right. I have been flying through books since I got this new job, and I don't have any reception inside the building where I work, so basically I can't do anything else except listen to audiobooks. And as a result, I am making amazing time through my TBR, better time than I have made in possibly a year. So I have another book for you already. This was also a patron requested book, although I think this one was not one that they expected me to love, and that's good, because I didn't. So brace yourselves, because we have a rant. We have a good old-fashioned Julian is pissed off. This book made me feel some type of way, and that type of way was rage. The book is The Butcher and the Wren. Let us read the blurb from Goodreads, shall we? Something dark is lurking in the Louisiana bayou. A methodical killer with a penchant for medical experimentation is hard at work completing his most harrowing crime yet. Sure. Taunting the authorities who desperately try to catch up again. Sure. But forensic pathologist Dr. Wren Muller is the best there is, armed with an encyclopedic knowledge of historical crimes and years of experience working in the medical examiner's office. She's never encountered a case she couldn't solve. Until now. Case after case is piling up on Wren's examination table, and soon she is sucked into the all-consuming cat and mouse chase with a brutal murderer, getting more brazen by the day. Sure. Oh, gosh. If you squint, all of this is true, but it is blown up so far past what it actually is in the book. I didn't write notes because I'm just listening at work, so I just listen and then I try to the next day film a book review, and that's where we're at. Apparently the author of this was a co-host from chart-topping... Whoa, Nigel. Just knocking my laptop over. Chart-topping true crime podcast called Morbid. And then I saw someone else's review. Let me see if I can find it. Sometimes podcasters don't need book deals. Now that I have read this book, wholeheartedly agree. I can't believe that there are some people one-starring this book after only reading some of it, when there are so many more delightful reasons to one-star this book when you get all the way to the end. Listen, this book was chugging along at a comfortable 2-star for me. It wasn't good, but it had not done anything so blatantly offensive that I was going to drop it to 1 star until the ending, and we will talk about that. I am going to talk full spoilers in this because honestly I don't think that you should read this book. If you're looking for a crime book, there are better ones out there. There are better thrillers that do this exact thing that this book is doing better than this book. I am certain. I don't have any recommendations for you right off the top of my head, but I am certain that there are better books than this that will give you exactly what this book is promising, but actually deliver. Let's dive right in and talk characters first, because you all know that I am a character-loving girly. I'm a character-oriented writer, I'm a character-oriented reader. And a book like this seems like it would need to get pretty down and nitty-gritty with the characters, right? Because it's this intense cat and mouse game between this forensic pathologist and a serial killer. No. It is so shallow. The characters are tissue paper. You don't know, anything about them. Everybody is so half-baked. Not even half-baked. They turned the oven on, but didn't even put the characters into it. The murderer just reads exactly like he stepped out of a very average episode of Criminal Minds. An episode of Criminal Minds that didn't have the charming detective characters trying to solve the case. He is so cliched. He's such a cliche. He is every serial killer that you have ever seen on TV and bad crime TV or read in terrible pulpy books. There is nothing deep or interesting about him. Even as you're watching him do these horrible crimes, you're just so? You don't care. Why would you care? You have no reason to care. And I tried to turn off my brain and just enjoy it as though I am watching an episode of Criminal Minds because I like Criminal Minds. But I couldn't, because the main character was even worse than the murderer. Wren, the forensic pathologist, is the most bland piece of damp tissue paper that I've ever read in my life. She has no personality. None. She's supposed to be solving the crime. She does jack shit. She just bumblefucks into clues that the murderer basically gift wraps for her, and she's too stupid to realize it. She's infuriating. She has a husband for some reason. The entire story, I'm like, why does she have a husband? Is he gonna get kidnapped later? Like, is he gonna bring out something? Is he gonna be in danger or try to rescue her? Or there's no reason for her to have a husband. The only person that she has any interaction with, any meaningful interaction with whatsoever, is her, like, detective partner guy. I'm, like, not sure who he was. He was a cop. I pictured him looking like Shelby from Heavy Rain. That guy, because we're also given absolutely no character descriptions except for that the murderer has a crooked smile. That's it. And maybe he has, like, I think his hair gets a little unruly sometimes, but I couldn't tell you what the main character looks like. I couldn't tell you what her partner guy looks like. Other than the crooked smile and maybe messy hair, I couldn't tell you what the murderer looks like. This author was like, descriptions, not interested in those. Characters, not interested in those. And I'm gonna spoil this for you right now. The main character turns out to have been a previous victim of the serial killer who escaped. We keep getting like these flashbacks that we're not supposed to know are flashbacks, but I guessed it really easily because I've read books before. And clearly this author is very new and novice at this, and so she doesn't know how to set it up well. And so I was like, okay, well, obviously this is like the past that we're watching, and this character is Wren. So you finally get to the part where Wren, the most dense crime solver on the planet, realizes that this is the same guy and that he's been leaving clues for her. The only clues that the police have been getting are these clues that he's been leaving for her, and she's just like, whoosh. So she like escaped his... Again, this is like an episode of Criminal Minds. She escaped his most dangerous game human hunting thing that he does with his victims, where he sets them loose on this convenient, huge property that he has and hunts them for sport. It's so stupid. It's so stupid. This author... This is so stream of consciousness. I apologize if you don't like those kind of reviews, but it felt like this author believed that if she mentioned enough real life serial killers that we would then imagine that her serial killer was actually realistic and believable, when in reality he was a cartoon. Yeah, he's meticulously kidnapping all of these people and putting them through his most dangerous game, but the main character escaped in her past and then decided to become a forensic pathologist because that would help her solve the crimes. Do we ever get to explore her trauma? Do we ever get to see how affected she is by realizing that this guy is the serial killer who captured her in her past? Of course not. Absolutely not, because this author cannot handle it. She is too new, she is too novice. And so the obvious thing of this character having some kind of breakdown never happens. They don't even take her off the fucking case. And at one point she's like, you should use me as bait. And her cop friend is like, are you sure? And she's like, yeah. And he's like, sounds great to me. I can't stop you. You're a grown woman. And I'm like, okay. So we're not even gonna pretend that there's some kind of conflict of interest here, because she was a previous victim of this man. Ah!
I hated her so much. It flames.
But I suppose the partner understands rightfully that she has no personality and therefore will be unaffected by this entire situation. And she is. She has handily just compartmentalized that away so she can keep doing her job. And like, aside from a few minor moments of in her brain, nothing really affects her ever. Because to affect her, she would have to have a personality and thoughts and feelings, and she doesn't, because she's made out of wet tissue paper. The only character that I could even maybe come close to kind of liking is her cop friend. And that's because he occasionally does things that human beings would do. Like, there's a whole moment where she breaks down for like 10 seconds when she finally puts the pieces together. Just genius detective here. When she finally puts it together that this guy's the same guy, she has like one moment where she starts crying and he hugs her and they cry and then she's over it, she's done. And like, but that also felt really random because he hadn't been very touchy-feely with her before. He didn't strike me as the sort of guy to just hug her like that, but I was like, whatever. Any human emotion in this book I will take because there was none. And I know people talk a lot in the true crime circles about the glorification of the killer, the focus on the killer instead of the victims and survivors, and this book did that as well. We spend a lot of time watching the killer, just watching him, not really getting into his psyche, not really exploring him, even though that too kind of it's a tightrope to walk because, you know, we have this desire to understand why killers do what they do, but even doing that glorifies them and puts them in the spotlight. So this book definitely seemed way more interested in following this sort of cliched guy as he goes about his totally 100% meticulous murders. Like, he's so blasé about everything. The book assures us that he's enjoying this, but I see no evidence of that. He reminded me a lot of Clover from the book that we did a read-along of, The Cellar. Shitty book. This book had a lot in common with that, actually, to me. There were a lot of the writing style, everything. And The Murderer reminded me a lot of Clover because it's just the most dulled down, simplified version of a serial killer that you can possibly get. It's like a child's understanding of a serial killer. It was hilarious at one point. The cop guy was like, "We're so close to catching this guy." And I'm like, I would love some proof of that. Do you have any clues? You have no clues that I know of that you were taking seriously or doing anything with. You have no suspects, none whatsoever. You're not interrogating anybody. You're just following around finding bodies and hoping that maybe this time the killer will be standing over one of those bodies, tenting his fingers and laughing evilly and going, "Yes, I did it, I killed them all."
What are you doing in my corpse hatch?
I mean, perhaps this is an accurate portrayal of the police and their skill at work here, but they just didn't seem like they were even trying. They were happy to let him go on his merry way, killing people left, right, and sideways. Alright, so that was kind of the characters. I was all over the place, but let's talk about the plot. The plot, super simple. Murderer on the loose, killing again in Louisiana. I don't know why it was set in Louisiana. Like everything else, the setting was also very bland and flat. One of his previous escaped victims is now a forensic pathologist, and he has decided that he wants to get her attention and make her suffer because... And then why he waited this long, I don't think we're ever told why he went into hiding and then came back now. He's just decided that that's what he wants to do. So he starts murdering again in the most ridiculous, over-the-top ways, like I said, straight out of a crime TV show. After most of the book has gone by, the main character finally figures out that it's the same guy and reveals, much to the shock of no one who is reading the book, that she is Emily, one of his previous victims who escaped. And then she goes to try to catch him. That's it. That's the book. I know that there are books that do this exact same twist, this exact same thing, but better. So please go find those. TV shows have done it better. Go find movies. Go find those, please. Please, because this was so bad. Because sometimes podcasters don't need book deals. It's just so infuriating in the bookish world how much popularity is required to make it, especially in traditional publishing. People swear up and down that, oh, you don't need a platform, you don't need to be anybody to be traditionally published, but it sure fucking helps. Speaking of things that make me sad that this is traditionally published, the prose are so just novice. It is very clearly one of this person's first attempts. The prose are crunchy, they are unskilled, they are clumsy, it's all telling and no showing. I would have a field day developmentally editing this, quite frankly. When I developmentally edit, I don't just help you with bigger picture, I help you with smaller picture. So things like sentence structure flow, repetitive words, word choices, and I would have just really sat down with her and been like, honey, you do not need to use the words feel or felt for everything. Maybe I should make a video about this. I don't know, maybe it's a short in the making, but felt is a filter word and it holds your audience apart from your character. Now, sometimes felt is useful, such as if your character cannot see something but can feel it, Obviously, the word felt or feel is going to be useful. But every single time that her character experienced anything, it was always he felt, she felt, they felt. They couldn't experience an emotion, a sensation, a thought, without felt being involved. And it just drove me insane after a while. But it's so disheartening to see the most simple, uncomplicated, clunky novice prose in a traditionally published book. Although at the same time encouraging to anybody out there who's trying to be traditionally published, because you don't have to be good. Every time I read one of these really terrible traditionally published books, it sends me off into a ranting spiral about how the publishing industry is just bullshit. But anyway, that's not what I'm here to rant about. What I finally want to rant about is another thing that makes me just so confused how this was traditionally published. And this is the biggest spoiler of all because this involves the ending. There isn't one. There isn't even a climax. Where the climax should be, it just stops. And it's not like this is the first book in the series. It just stops. People looked at this. Agents, editors, publishers looked at this and said, this is fine? So how it goes is that the characters finally catch on that the murderer is who he is. And she's like, all right, I'm going to use myself as bait and lay a trap for him, which she does and doesn't. It's very confusing. He gets into her house, he steals something of hers, he watches her sleep, and I'm like, oh, okay, is this leading towards the climax? But it's not. That happened at some other point in time. So instead, she goes to his land. They finally figured out where it is with minimal detective work. If they had tried just a smidge harder, they wouldn't have even needed her to remember that she used to be his victim. So they go to his land, and they chase after him, and they think they've shot him. He shoots one person with an arrow. I was like, okay, here comes the bloodbath. He's going to start picking them off because we know that he has set up this land with video cameras, sniper stations. He's got it all set up. I'm ready for this cat and mouse of him hunting them down through his land and his house as they're trying to find him. But instead he shoots the cop friend in the leg with an arrow and then buggers off, and the cops think that they have shot him because they shoot somebody roughly his same size and shape, and it goes down. And then they go up to this corpse, and it takes the main character to realize that it's not the same guy, that the corpse that they shot is not the murderer. And I was like, ooh, okay, this is where we really get into the climax, all right? He could be anybody. He's clearly disguised himself. We have a lot of faceless, no-name police officers and EMTs running around, and I'm like, okay, he clearly, because we know he likes to set things up. He is quote-unquote meticulous. So he's clearly disguised himself. She climbs into the ambulance with her injured cop buddy, and I'm like, oh, the ambulance driver is going to turn out to be the murderer, and this is where the climax actually starts, right? Right? The book just ends. He got away. The murderer got away. The climax doesn't even start. We build up towards it, but them going to his house, him shooting one of them with a bow and arrow, and them shooting what they think is him, and then turns out not to be him, is not a climax. Where's the climax? How was this okayed by publishers, by agents, by editors? Everybody thought that this was fine? Flabbergasted. I heard that this didn't have a great ending, but I expected it to have something. Now, I have heard of cliffhangers, and plenty of thrillers and crime stories leave things open-ended and maybe the murderer escapes. But usually after some kind of climax. He still could have escaped after he turned out to be the ambulance driver and brought them on a harrowing night of survival as they try to hunt him while he hunts them. And then finally, at the last minute, he gets away. 100% I would not be complaining right now. It's like the author got bored of her own book because the cops were getting close to the villain, and I think she was way more interested in the villain than she was the main character, by far. The cops were getting close, and so she got bored, and she just stopped it. And she's just like, yeah, the villain, who I love, probably, is out in the world still somewhere. And the main character just goes to the hospital with her friend who was shot with an arrow. The end. I was under the impression, wrongfully, that books normally had a beginning, a middle, and an end. But it's good to know that actually you don't need some of those things. I thought that those were the fundamental parts of a story, if you don't follow any other beat sheets of any kind, which I don't, I do believe that stories should have a beginning, a middle, and an end. We even had this setup. The author tried to set up where, again, this author keeps mentioning real life serial killers. I believe in hopes that we will think that her serial killer is anywhere kind of like those guys. And that she mentions, like, everyone that got caught, they slipped up. They made a slip up. They made a mistake. They got lazy. They got overconfident. And so she then has this murderer do a sloppy, overconfident murder. And I'm like, okay. It's very basic, but hey, at least we're following up to something. We have a theme. But it doesn't get him caught. It doesn't screw him over. He shoots a cop and runs away laughing because he totally had it planned the whole time, set up with this fall guy who might as well have been a mannequin for all we care about the guy who actually got shot. We never see him. We're in the murderer's point of view, but we never see him go get this guy or, like, set this guy up to pretend to be him and get shot. That's unimportant. We don't need to see that happen, even though we see the murderer do a bunch of other stuff. We're in his POV. We went to the expense of getting 2 narrators for this audiobook. We ran out of money. We spent all our money on audiobook narrators and we couldn't afford an ending. Whew, I'm getting heated. I'm just so filled with righteous rage. It's very warm in here today. Yeah. You see all those other YouTubers with their complex, beautiful makeup? They probably have central air. No beautiful, complex makeup looks to behold when you tune into my channel. Just some sweaty, angry lady. But yeah, that was The Butcher and the Wren. That was worse than I thought it was gonna be. I thought it was just gonna be mediocre, but then it stepped in it. What do you think? Have you read this book? Comment below and let me know what you thought of it. Did you like it? I have good news for you. The only way for you to go from here is up. There's so many more crime books that do it better. So look forward to that. I'm happy for you. If you like reading books that have beginnings, middles, and ends, I have some books for you. None of them are crime fiction. I'm sorry. So, like, if you're looking for more crime fiction, the books that I have written are not that. But they are stories that have complex, deep characters and, at the very least, are whole stories with beginnings, middles, and endings. Yes, that's right. I spent the big bucks and put endings in my books. If you would like to go ahead and recommend a book for me to read, you can hop on over to my Patreon where there is a level where you can boss me around. That's basically tell me to read something. Preferably something that has an audiobook version. In fact, it pretty much needs to be something that has an audiobook version. But I will finally make good time on reading it because now I can crack these out, baby. The only issue might be if my library has them on hold for a long period of time. If you like what I do here and want to support me but don't want to go through all the hassle of Patreon, I know some people don't particularly like it, I also have a Ko-fi where you can just leave me a tip, a one-time donation, and I do have some open commissions over there on Ko-fi, so you can check that out. Or if you want to go all the way and you want me to tear apart your book and help you make it better so you don't accidentally publish a book that doesn't have an ending, I am a developmental editor. That's right, and I will happily work with you at whatever pace we need to go for your budget. Your first 5K words are only $25, so you can find out if we would be a good team. Check me out over on Fiverr. All right, I always have such a long outro, and I don't know if anybody listens to it anymore because those of you who are familiar with this channel probably have it memorized. But if you have listened to this far, what is your favorite songbird? Put it in the comments below, because it just so happens that the wren is my favorite garden bird, my favorite songbird. I love wren. Please comment your favorite songbird down below. Confuse all of the losers who didn't get this far. But that is all for right now. Thanks so much for watching. I will see all of you again next time with whatever it is I happen to be doing next time. Bye.
Hello. 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 Hello.
And now I would like you to say hello to my patrons. Patrons like Sunnyshy, Saga, Sarah, Kat, 78 Kilograms of Shade, Veda, Ingrid, Roma, Pansing Pony, Julius the Nice Dragon, Haley, Sam, Kira, Kohikaro, Mooney, Maria, Kristen, Bear, Jojo Bookish, Lauren, Robin, Ursula, Caitlin, KJ, LaFone, Amanda, Celia, Alyssa, Rita, Deborah, Afra, Swamp Goblin Waifu, Sophia, Marine, Kit, Hidden Glade, Light Julie, The Unraveled Legion, Belle, Patrick, Anne Sophie, Callison, Ray, Shelby, Zaire, Jesper, Rennie, Scribbling Cat, Savvy, Jenny, Amanda, Lisa, and Sarah. I hope you gave them all a very hearty hello.